to see
Hey,
you.
how are you?
I'm doing pretty good this morning. How are you doing?
I am good as well. Yes.
I'm really excited about our talk today.
Yes, so am I. Yeah, there's been a lot going on. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that 2 weeks ago, you and I talked about the comfort zone, and then both of us had comfort zone issues. And this is totally my experience of, whether you want to call it the universe or God or whatever you call the magic that we can't explain.
Yeah.
When I touch it, it touches back.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's incredible, like how much, how far back it pushed, like, all right, now that you know this stuff, we're gonna test you here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been crazy. So how tell me about your week.
Yes. So I think two things really came out of my week. I actually told my husband all about what we talked about on our drive over to the wedding right after the podcast. And the thought of just where am I not expanding my comfort zone at all? Like, where am I really stuck? Where is it small? And I realized that there's actually quite a few areas since my car accident that I just haven't pushed on. And these are more things like I used to work out all the time. I rode my bike everywhere. I was actually a certified personal trainer. Like I was in my body. And after my car accident, I didn't want to be in my body anymore. And so I don't do those kinds of things. And instead, I have a lot of like soft blankets. And so I think with exercising and with eating, I am just like comfort, comfort. And I think after the accident, like this idea of being in pain again was so unacceptable to me that I just wouldn't go there, even if it was pain of like working out and getting fit, right? Even positive pain. And so I took some deeper looks at that. And then the other area is this sort of addiction that I have to being full of energy and energetic and productive and doing things in my life. And it's hard for me because the things I love all of them, right? I want to write all these blogs, I want to do all this, but I still need balance in my life. And kind of starting to look at the pieces of that and looking at why I'm so afraid to rest and what that means to me. Because resting in some ways is outside of my comfort zone.
Hmm,
Yeah.
that's
Like,
pretty interesting.
yeah, it is. And, like anything, it's convoluted and it's nuanced. And this is how you do personal growth, right? You take the big ball of yarn and you go, okay, I'm going to pull on this string a little bit. Oh, no, that string's stuck. I'm going to pull on this string a little. And slowly you unweave it and change happens. So I'm really grateful for
Yeah.
our talk last episode. So tell me about how it showed up in your life the last 2 weeks.
Um, So, all right. So the first part was I started doing acupuncture treatments, and the first one I had was amazing. Like I felt stoned. And I hadn't been on anything for like a day, since prior to that. But it just released all these like endorphins in my system, and I didn't realize that there's an actual like a treatment protocol for PTSD where it just floods your system with what you call them, endocrine, yeah,
Hmm.
endocrines, something like that, and you feel amazing. Like I felt like I was just floating above the table. Not really like an out of body experience, but so that was amazing. Then 2 days after it, I got this huge knot in my shoulder, and I keep a lot of my stress up in my traps, up in my neck, and it was even like hard to sleep. Like I couldn't position myself where I was comfortable because it would like tweak it, and I'd get a headache and stuff. And then like 2 days later, that went away, and then I felt like I had the flu. And the aches and pains have gone away, but I have this extreme fatigue that I've never felt in my life. And so I went yesterday for my second treatment, And she said they call it like an acupuncture detox, where it just releases years of trapped toxins from all of these chemicals of like negativity, the cortisol and adrenaline, all this stuff that just gets trapped inside. And you just got to flush it out. And it could take a couple of treatments, 2-3 treatments before you finally get everything out. So I don't do good when I don't feel well. Like, I really don't care about anything. I'm like, I'm not working, I'm not putting up video, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm just going back to my comfort zone, my naps, and then like the wrong types of food, all this stuff. Like you said, not working out. And so as I'm trying to push through that, I started to realize, like, I'm trying to run before I can walk with the business, So right when I started it, website went up real fast. Socials went up real fast. My own podcast thing, like, just, I'm doing it. And I hadn't gotten anything to the point where I wanted it, but I was doing all this other stuff as well, because, you have to do everything in order to be successful. So I tried to fix the website and I destroyed it. Like, the homepage was just a black page. It was completely gone. And then when I got it back to what it was, the menu bar was missing, and I didn't know enough to like figure it out. And then I felt like the only thing my business had become was doing social media posts. I wasn't moving ahead with my classes, to further my education or anything like that. I wasn't putting together like presentations and things that I love doing. Everything was just posting because I'm just not good at it. So scheduling out posts for like a week will take me like 2 days, to do the whole thing. So I finally had to give that up to somebody else. And that's like so far out of my comfort zone, because again, like, I have to take care of everything, and if I don't know how to do something, that means I failed, so I've already like basically condemned all of this to failure because I supposedly failed in one, in one instant. Where earlier today I had a call with the girl who's doing like the social medias for me now, and it's amazing and it's so easy, and I'm just like, this is all I have to do, and then I don't have to. And she's like, yeah, then you don't have to think about anything. I'm like, I'm an idiot. Like, why didn't I do this before? But that comfort zone, that's where it becomes the prison, and right outside of that, but stepping through it, that's where that freedom comes in. And even that freedom it can be scary,
Yes.
when you're not used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like your acupuncture story, because I feel like that's every single instance of personal growth is going through the muck before you get to the other side. And I think that a lot of times personal growth and development is more challenging for really intelligent people, because they're standing over here and they're like, no, I see the top of the hill. I'll just be there. Like, just let me get in the helicopter. I'll go there. And you're like, no, you have to go down into the forest. You have to lose your way. You have to get totally muddy. You have to go through the swamp, and you have to climb all the way back up. And that's the only way you get there. And it's really challenging to actually do it, because it doesn't happen in the mind. It happens in the body. And finding your way through that darkness so that you can really grow is challenging. And I mean, that's why I think, life coaches, therapists, all those sort of helping professions are so key. If you get someone who really matches with you and will be your partner and be like, all right, come on, let's do this shit. Hold my hand. We're going to go through the swamp of despair. Right.
Yeah. 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 And I love that, like, finding somebody that you really match with, and it just reminds me of like how this podcast was started, just from seeing a couple of videos and then reaching out, and now because we just vibed so well together, now it is what it is,
Yeah.
so finding that person is so key.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So I think we've kind of thrown around the idea of talking about drugs and drug use today. And then I was kind of Googling, some drug use, history of drug use, cultural stuff. And what kept coming up is addiction. And I thought, oh, that's so funny. I'm trying to talk about drug use, and what Google is talking about is addiction. So
Yeah.
I thought, hey, maybe we talk about addiction too, because like I'm experiencing right now, I'm addicted to a certain level of doing, of productivity, of going. And that addiction, I think addiction in any case, drugs or other, is not good,
Yeah.
right? And how easily we confuse the two. So I thought maybe we could just start with like a little recap from both of us about what our relationship with illegal and legal drugs were from start to now. So for me, I grew up in a family that was poor. There was a lot of alcoholism. And so I always thought that drug use was for losers. I mean, I had an uncle who like lived in the riverbed in LA, was homeless, right? Like real on the street type of stuff.
Wow.
So growing up, I was like, I'm never going to touch any of that stuff because losers do that stuff and I don't want to be a loser. And then I met my husband, my current husband, and he knew all these incredible people, like so successful, so kind, and they all used tons of drugs. And I was like, well, wait a second here. Like, it wasn't the drugs that made my previous experience, not the drugs that make somebody a loser, it's the choices, right? And so I started to, experiment a little bit with using drugs. And I'm so grateful for my husband because I didn't want to do it in big groups. I didn't want to do it in parties, right? And he really helped like lead me to be able to have some great experiences. Then I started using them for healing more. And I realized like, oh no, some of this is medicine. Like we're talking about it incorrectly, right?
Right.
And so that was kind of like my arc with illegal drugs. With legal drugs, I think like as far as mental health drugs, even though I was a mental health advocate and in the field, personally, I never wanted to take like an SSRI or an antidepressant, even though I struggled with depression and anxiety. And then recently, I tried an SSRI once years ago. It made me feel crappy. And I was like, see, I was right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I tried a different one more recently, and it helped tremendously. And so I am still on it right now. I'm on Lexapro, and it's really helpful. And so for me, that I'm going to stay on for a little while. And I think I'm still in sort of a learning phase about accepting that it could just be as simple as my brain not producing a certain chemical. And that's what the medication is doing for me. But there's this belief system still that like I'll get well and go off of it, right? And so I'm still sort of grappling with that piece of it. I also have ADD, so I've tried Adderall, been on and off that for periods of focus in my life. I still don't know how I feel about that. This month, September, I've decided to go totally sober, besides Lexapro, but like no illegal or legal drugs, just because I want to take a step back and really go, okay, how's this impacting me? And then choose things consciously instead of just out of habit and unconsciously. So September will be sober for me, and then we'll see what I pick back up. I also think that in my life, drugs can be used for different times, like the incubation period when you're trying to do that growth and figure out like what's happening, where do I need to go, great for that stage, right?
Yeah.
The integration period after you've had like some big learning, great for that stage. Sometimes if you're trying to tackle habit changes, not so great for that change. That might be like, and that's part of why I'm choosing sober September too, because I'm like, I need to make some diet and exercise changes, and drugs don't really help with that type of
Yeah.
change, right? So kind of knowing when and how to use them. I'll also mention that in my marriage, we've used a lot of ecstasy or Molly or whatever you want to call it. And I have found that to be a beautiful way to like drop the ego, communicate heart to heart. And again, I would call it medicine. I think everybody should do it in relationships because it just cuts right to the chase. So that's kind of my like quick recap on thoughts on drug use. What's your history?
So, first, I want to say, like, I love the fact that you talk about how you're still grappling with some of this stuff, because I think it is presented like Google, like you either are for or against. It's a black or white thing. And then depending on where you are, like the other side is just wrong, you know, but it is a kind of a process that you have to go through to see where you fit into all of that stuff. I love that. But for me, I grew up same way. Drugs are for losers. But my parents, they grew up with a lot of alcoholism in the family, and they took us out of that. They moved us away from that side of the family. Um, then they found church, and we got into this very strict religious church where anything like that was straight from Satan. You know, like they would actually say it was a way to open up your mind so that demons can come in. Which is like kind of scary when you're 6 years old, but like, I'm never doing drugs, you know. As I got older, I played around. Like, I think I maybe smoked some marijuana a couple of times, but didn't really have access to anything. I think I tried acid once in high school, and like flipped out because like my teacher, she had her glasses like up on her head, and her head was down grading papers, but I swear she was looking right at me. And I was like, the guy that gave it to me, I was like, she knows, man, she knows, she knows. So I'm like, I didn't like that. So I'm not going to do that again. I went straight paranoid. Um, Now though, I've come full circle, you know, so I went through a time where I was on antidepressants and anti-anxieties, and I loved, especially the anti-anxiety. It was Klonopin or clonazepam that I was on, because it just made me feel completely numb. You know, I didn't feel the effects that some people like talk about with what's the normal one? The real no, not Lexapro. That's what you said. I've the one that comes like in the bars and stuff, the
Oh,
anti-anxiety.
Xanax? Is that what that
Yeah,
is?
Xanax. Yeah, like I've heard some people like there's things you could do, like, but I've never felt that way. I just felt numb and I felt shut off, and that was better than like this weird internal pain, like physical pain that I was feeling. Um, and then I was on some SSRIs, and like the dosage kept going up, and then wouldn't work, so I'd have to get off one, get on another one. A thing that I always found funny now at this point was how that's one of the things that's never sort of discussed, that there is a detox to prescription meds as well. And sometimes it can be pretty bad,
Yeah.
and very hard to take. And in fact, even dangerous. The benzos are one of the, you know, like alcohol is a thing that can actually, you can die from detoxing off it. And how that kind of coincides with addiction, how that is a part of like that sort of whole addiction, you know, bullet point there is, I always found kind of interesting, you know. So now I'm at a place where I did all that. I felt no help. I actually felt a lot number. I was on Prozac for about 6, 7 months, and that helped. But then I felt like I was at a point where I want to try, you know, without it now. And it's worked, you know, but I would have no problem, like in a heartbeat, if I felt like I was going back to that place to get back on it. So I felt like that helped me out a lot more. Um, on the illegal side of things, now, especially now, I'm in Connecticut, and they've just opened it up recreationally, but I got my medical marijuana card, and that had, excuse me, the biggest impact on me. But it took me, funnily enough, it took me about 2 years to get on it, because my wife Sandy was completely against it.
Hmm.
Um, she had a lot of addiction, alcoholism and drug addiction in her family. So she's like, nope, it'll never be in my house, like that kind of like strong stance. So I researched it for about 2 years, and slowly I would talk to her about it. And she finally said, all right, you can try it out. gave me that permission. She's like, okay, I'm okay with you trying it. And the effects were just amazing. I was calm, but I was still communicating with her. I wasn't just like this numb sort of ball of nothing that was sitting there. I had some life in me. And the more I would find out about it and the more I would use it, the more she would start to encourage me to go use it, especially if she saw my anger coming on. She's like, why don't you go outside and smoke a little bit? And now I've been using it for about 5 years, and I've just opened up into, I would say within this last year, into also using psilocybin, which is actually my primary care physician was the one that told me to get on that. She wanted me to do it through the VA. And when I went to the VA to see if I can get on a study, they just kind of laughed at me about it. So I found my own way. And like you were saying about the ecstasy, like the ego just disappears. All this stuff and all the insecurities and judgments that I put on myself now, when I'm on it, if that stuff comes up, there is no judgment at all. It feels like it's just a thing, it's just a completely meaningless thing. And it shocks me how much power I give to that judgment that doesn't matter, and then when I come off it, it's so funny how that judgment comes right back up and reclaims its throne, you know. So I think with those, the biggest thing I've learned with those is the intention that you go into with the use. Like you were talking about, it's great for like sometimes and it's not so great for other times. And that way, if you go in with the intention of this is going to be my fix, then it's wrong. Like I don't believe mentally there is a drug for what we deal with most often that is going to fix it. Like there would be penicillin is going to fix like a virus or something. You know what I mean? But with the mental health aspect, I don't think that there's one thing that's going to fix it. I believe it has to come from an internal place, and it can be done without those substances as well, prescription or recreational, whatever you want to call it. But they are very powerful, strong medicines that I've come to like more of that side of, because it doesn't have as much of a demand physically on us that the prescription side does. But if you fall in that category, you need that, then yes, then you'd use what you need, because what matters is the growth. What matters is having life, not what we're taking or what we're not taking. All of it is just a tool. Yep. And so that's kind of like where I've come to now, from it's going to bring demons into my head to it's going to bring like enlightenment and everything, but it all is, everything works.
Yeah. I think a lot with antidepressants, anti-anxiety, those types of drugs, I believe right now they're covering up the fact that as humans, we're not living the way we're supposed to in a way that is healthy for us. And I think that if we worked a reasonable amount of hours, if we worked outdoors, if we were living in tribes, if we like all the things that we need to feel whole and complete, we wouldn't need those. And I think that there's this huge epidemic, rise in the use of those. And I mean, we really saw that during COVID, right? Those numbers shot up because people were alone, because we don't have healthy structures in our lives for balance, for work, for culture, society, friendships, right? All that stuff's just lost. And I would actually say that it might be lost because we stopped doing drugs. Like if you look back through history, drugs were used by humans until like the early 19th century is when they started to become like, illegal, and that sort of talk of like, it's very recent. Yeah. And we have access to consciousness and growing our consciousness and being filled in our bodies. And then we stopped doing that. And then we got sick. And now we're getting prescription drugs. Like it's a weird evolution of use. And I feel like what you said about, weed and mushrooms, I also find them very, very helpful. And for me, I don't know how to describe it. I always say like, I feel out of my body I don't feel grounded a lot of the time. And that could be because of like my neurodivergence, or it could be partially my accident. But when I smoke weed, it helps me just come into my
Yes.
body.
Yes.
I feel present. I feel fully myself. My thoughts aren't racing anymore. So I can communicate better with people. I'm not awkward, and like it smooths things over for me. So it's great. Like if I'm going to a social situation that I have social anxiety about, a tiny bit of weed, perfect.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't feel bad about that. Like that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the strangest thing. So we've made it okay to take a benzo, which can bring on early onset dementia. Coming off it can be incredibly hazardous. And then weed, which has no known overdose level, um, is one of the safest, and the efficacy of it goes back 5,000 years, you know, substances that are out there. And this is bad and this is okay. You know, not only is it okay, but it's pushed, you
Yeah.
know, and I agree with you. I think 100% it is, we are not living the way that we're supposed to be. I know a lot of people talk about, I don't ever want to sound like a particular, group or so, but sometimes I get into that. I'm just, like we've become cogs in a machine. Like our identity is what we do. When we introduce ourselves, so when we go, to an event or something, like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm this, I'm that, and it's like, that's not who we are. Like, I am me. I'm not even Keith. Like, I'm beyond that, um, I am everything that encompasses me, but we bring our identity down to the one thing, our job, which we have to choose by the time we're 18, and we have to start thinking about it like when we're 16, 17. And I don't even know what I want to do now with my life, much less when I'm 16, but we put all this pressure, and it starts from, 5 years old, and you start kindergarten, and you're told to sit down, shut up, do what you're told, only what you're told, and when you're told to do it, which gets you ready to move right into the workforce, and then that just becomes, every day is like Groundhog's Day. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. You know,
Yeah.
one of the things we were talking about in the comfort zone, it goes back to a thing I read in Joe Dispenza's book, where how our mind needs those new experiences, and it helps create new neural pathways, and it helps actually grow the mind, and the same experiences over and over has the opposite effect. Things shrink, so people get more miserable, more upset, and it's the same thing. And then that becomes a habitual emotional state that you're in, that starts that the emotional habit starts dictating how you're going to feel.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree that I feel like they took away our drugs to make us fit in the system, right?
Yeah.
And be capitalists and work in the factories and go to the school. And now they're giving us the drugs they want to control to keep us in the system, right? And it's all about making money. And it's disgusting. It's so disgusting. And I think there is a lot of people right now, especially the younger generation, who are looking for a way out.
Yes.
And I think that, like, as I know a lot of people, when they, hear the news, and it can be really depressing, but I think that is like the pillar of hope, right? There's a lot of people who are saying, nope, I don't think so. We're going back to a different way of living. And I think that's awesome. And I can't wait to see where that goes. And I hope that conscious drug use is a part of that, because I think that will help us get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was listening to Graham Hancock, who is, he's written books and done interviews about how drugs are our right as humans and how it's been taken away from us. And he was sharing about this culture, some tiny little tribe where they actually give like infants tiny little doses of ayahuasca. Like you get little doses from the very beginning, because to them, in their value system, having access to like your greater consciousness and is key to being a human in the world. So they would never ever take that away. And that's just part of how you grow up, is using substances that help expand your consciousness. And
Yeah.
that's the reality, right? And I think it's important to talk about that. Drugs are made bad and shameful in our culture, and that you don't have to buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that a couple times on like your TikTok videos where people will sort of attack you for smoking weed or something. And I'm like, wow, this is so fascinating, because this isn't a person who's like, this is my personal experience, right? This is a person who's just been fed this thing and they're just spouting it back out. And that's how so many of us work. This is what I'm fed. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to keep saying it to other people and judging other people. And if that changes, our world could drastically improve.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorite things from Sadhguru is when he talks about beliefs putting us in a box. And like you said, when we're in that box, we don't have to think about it. It's just whatever is told to us goes right through us and right out. And I think especially in this day and age, you see kind of two sides, where the side that you're supposed to like hate on all these young people and young man. I'm at that age now where I just said that word, young people. Oh, that's upsetting. But you're supposed to like just hate on them all, like, oh, they don't like working, anything, but they're waking up to like they'll never be able to achieve what like my parents were able to, just because of the disparity in the money and all that stuff and pay and everything. And they're also waking up to there's other ways to make money in this day and age, and they're doing it and in an incredible way. Like seeing somebody convert a van or an old school bus into a house, like, and living like off the grid, but having all modern technology and stuff I'm like, I wish I had the courage to do something like that, And then you have, which now my brain just went that way. And it was just like, oh, we don't need that anymore. So I don't know what the other side is anymore. The side that just keeps sort of shouting the party line at you. This is what I was taught, so therefore this is what it is. And that's something even just from my days in church that I saw. Like I would learn something, taking a science class at school or something and be like, this is amazing. And they're like, so what? God did it. Like, it's not that, God did it, and just how you brush off truth because that's what belief tells you. That's one of the things like I learned is that truth does not matter. Belief is what matters, because people will look in the face of truth and just turn their back on it because that's just not what they believe. And no matter what you do, you're not going to get them to change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny what you were just saying, I think applies to my situation right now, because I've had, I was raised in poverty. And so I adopted a belief system that you work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you get out. And that's exactly what I did. But I've worked, 40, 50 hours a week most of my life, 2 jobs, or work a job and have my own business, or right, hustle, hustle, hustle. And now I'm at a point in my life where I want to go the other direction. I want to have balance. I want my job to be like, I don't know, a third or a quarter of my life. I have my job, I have my family, I have my hobbies. I have all, right. I'm well balanced.
Yeah.
But when I say that, I might as well be telling myself that I want to like have a couple unicorns that live in my yard. Like, I mean, it's so unbelievable to me because my belief system is so strong that if I don't work that hard, everything's going to fall apart. I'll be homeless this time next year. Right. And so I'm really pushing through that. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about on this cultural scale is our culture says, fear, 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 be afraid, keep in the system, keep working, keep contributing. And to escape that, you've got to dig deep into some courage and flip the script. And it's challenging to do. And I think that drugs help with that. I don't know if you I sent you somebody on Instagram. I think it's Soul of Jared, I think is his tag.
Yeah. I started following him.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's so great though, because that's exactly what he says. He goes, I started doing mushrooms every new and full moon, like
Yeah.
intentionally, consciously as a compass to start guiding my life. And he goes, and after I started doing that, I couldn't just be a real estate agent. Like I couldn't just go do some kind of like in the box work, because I saw that there was actually all this magic out here and this
Yeah.
whole other reality. And and so it became impossible for me just to work a 9 to 5. And it's like, yes, that's it, right? That's how we flip the script. And so I think that I definitely have started using, I don't do it like new and full moon or every couple months, but when I start noticing that I am confused about where to go, kind of like you were describing actually with like your business, you're like, do I pull back here? Do I do that? I'll put aside an afternoon and I'll get my journals and I'll get like a sketchbook and all the things around me. And then I'll smoke a bunch of weed, or I'll do weed and mushrooms, or, and I will find my compass again so that I
Yeah.
know where to go and what to do next. And when I do that, my life gets better and better and better. And when I don't do it, like the years that I've gotten so busy and like disassociated or disconnected from that, worse, 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 worse. Like
Yeah.
having the ability to check in with yourself or check in with the universe, that's key.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because where you're coming from, that need to work, where like I'm coming from the exact opposite. You know, I used to work hard. And then when I became more and more and more afraid and more locked up to the point where I would go months without leaving the house. You know, I stopped working because that's when I convinced myself that I'm just a failure. That's who I am. That's my purpose in life. So now trying to come out of that 20-year belief system and run a business and put in the work that is needed, like not let it take over my life.
Yes.
But in a way it still did, because even though I wasn't doing the work I needed to do and putting the time in, it would consume my thoughts that I wasn't doing that, you know, and it would consume my emotions because every day was the same thing. I didn't do enough today. You know, I literally created this invisible boss that demanded everything from me, and I can never fulfill any of his wants. And I'm like, the dude's me. Like I'm an ass to myself. Like what a jerk, you know? And so when I start to feel that, I'll do that. I'll step back, um, and I'll go into the woods and with some mushrooms. And I just like, I think, what was it, a couple weeks ago, I was just laying on a massive rock out in the middle of the woods I like going off trail. And just laying there for a few hours, you know, like the spider crawled across me and it fascinated me. I was talking to him for like 20 minutes as he made his way away. And that was like, for once, like I feel like you were saying before, connected to my body. And that's something that goes away so quick because trauma does that. And then society doesn't want you there, you know, because they want you producing and consuming, you know, and then everything is just some weird cycle. We got to go buy our food from the grocery stores and the food makes us sick. So then we got to go to the doctors and get the medicine, and the medicine makes us sick. And, you know, and then the stuff that they're finding with hallucinogenics and mental health, here's something, ayahuasca, you can take it once and people are saying that they're not depressed again, you know, and it just opens them up to that, you know, but that's can't do that. That's wrong. You know, the one and done dose is wrong, but the everyday multiple, that's the way to go. You know, yeah, it's all backwards.
It really is. Yeah. Ayahuasca, I have not tried. I would like to. I have friends locally here who do, ceremonies every quarter, year, whatever their schedule is. The experience sounds amazing, but
Yeah.
also scary.
Yes.
I'm a real control freak. So the idea of going and being in a ceremony with other people is intimidating to me. I'm an introvert, right? I often feel awkward, all those things. The other thing I'm interested in is ketamine treatments, which are the same sort of thing, right? You go, and I actually applied to be an integration coach with a company called Mind Bloom, and they offer like at-home ketamine treatment. So you get your ketamine in the mail, and then you work with a coach through your ketamine sessions for like 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I think it's a really neat program. The pay was really low, so I ended up not taking the job when they offered it to me because I wanted to spend my time doing other things and that would have taken up too much time. But I loved the idea of it. And those are both things that I haven't tried, but would love to with intention when I feel the calling to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way with the ayahuasca. There's a place, I think, in Florida, a church that does it. Because I guess with a church, you can choose your sacrament.
Hmm.
Um, you can choose one natural sacrament. And so they chose ayahuasca, and they do things with vets, where they bring them through ayahuasca treatments. And I've known a few people that went down there and did it, and they absolutely loved it, said it changed their life. I want to try ketamine. I want to try ecstasy. I've heard amazing things about that. Um, I think I like to stay like I'm like a drug vegan, like I like to stay like completely natural, like no, I don't want any processing done. So yeah, my go-tos are always the cannabis, which I still can't, all the laws that they're based on today are all specifically built off of racism, and I mean, you could just Google Henry Anslinger and read some of the dude's quotes and how disgusting they are, you know, and yeah, and just the psilocybin is just amazing.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see those things become more legal for medicine and for recreation. And I
Yeah.
heard somebody say the funniest thing the other day. They said, I just want to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs. Because in
That's
the
awesome.
80s, like when we were kids, we had DARE, right? And like the whole, fight against
Yeah.
drugs. Well, it turns out drugs won. Now they're getting legalized.
Yeah, there is an awesome book, um, for anybody that like wants to look into it, called Chasing the Scream.
Hmm.
It's by a journalist who, a friend of his died from an overdose, so he dove into understanding everything about drugs. And it is so interesting because I would figure he would just be like, nope, they're wrong, they're dangerous, I mean, at every level. But he comes to the completely opposite conclusion, of how legalizing all drugs can be so beneficial, not only to people that deal with addiction, but also just to society, at large. And I think Portugal is one of the countries that did that, and they've had enormous success with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really interesting book.
Yeah, I think that it's important to talk to people about how they do it, where they do it, right? Because there are bad drug experiences. There are overdoses. There is lace drugs that are bad. Of course, all those things exist. But I think our response to that is to other it or make it bad, wrong, stop talking about it. And then that just gives it power. I know with my son, he's 20 now. Um, we talked to him about drugs from the very beginning. And we always said, like, yeah, if you want to, do mushrooms or something, make sure you're in an environment that feels safe, right? That you're not at like some frat party where because you're going to become open. It's going to make you open, and whatever's around you could seep in. So take care with your environment. Here's the things about safety. And he has such a healthy relationship with drug and alcohol use now because we were just open and communicative about it and didn't make it bad or wrong. And we told him the things that were the important things to know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things. I mean, if there's something to be nervous about, there's something that is dangerous, you want to know about it. You don't want to hide everything. And that was sort of like the stance, like just say no. It's that simple, and just push it away, shut up, don't worry about it, just don't deal, but it drove I think more people to experiment with it. And then when you had people like, oh, this stuff is amazing, um, like I didn't realize, like, Timothy Leary was a Harvard psychologist.
Yeah.
Oh, I just thought he was I've heard the name before, but I just thought he was some dude that was, some hippie from the 60s or whatever, but here's a guy from like the pinnacle of elitism, like where smart, cultured, expert in his field, and he's sitting there like on his deathbed doing LSD so that he can dictate what the experience is like while he's passing away. Like,
Wow.
would not think that, so yeah, there are I think so many benefits. I think the thing that I watch out for myself, I'm very routine driven. So it can easily become a part of my routine, like where at night I normally spend my nights, I'll watch like a couple of shows or whatever, and I'll smoke a bowl, because Sandy, she goes to bed real early because she's like up at 4 to work out and everything. And that's just against my religion, waking up at 4 in the morning. Um, so then it becomes like sort of this routine, and then it loses the sacredness,
Yeah.
to it. And especially with mushrooms, since mushrooms does connect me with my body, and I feel whole and complete. When I first started, I saw that there was this tendency to do it more and more and more. And I even looked into, if you can become addicted, and neuroscience, what they know now, they say no. But like gambling or whatever, porn, anything like that, it can become sort of that mental addiction, and that's sort of the line I draw in the sand. Like when I'm going to it because I need it, that's when I'm putting it down. It's going to be a sacred time for me, with myself, and not something I'm just doing, for shits and giggles.
Yeah. And I think that's the key with everything is you control it. It doesn't control you. Right. So
Yeah.
anything that controls you, watching too much TV, eating bad food, doing too many drugs, and the healthy ones, exercising too much. People are addicted to exercise
Yeah.
and go way overboard that way. Right. Everything is balance and moderation. And I feel like right now, at least for me in my life, that is really what I'm trying to achieve. And what my goal is this next year is make whatever choices I need to make to achieve that balance. And that's frightening, right? Because that's not what the system tells us to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like your talks with your son, like these are the talks that I think people have to have more of,
Yeah.
because we're not pushed to enjoying life. We're pushed to
Yes.
work,
Yes.
to hustle, 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 and especially now in this day and age of like courses, there are so many great courses. And I was so happy when I saw that your course is like filled up. I was like, yes, I was so pumped. But there are so many courses that teach us how to be something that we're not. There's courses like yours that teach us how to be who we are, and to shed, little plug there, all the stuff that makes us not who we are. But there's so many courses that tell us to become a character, to get into that fake it till you make it mindset, so that we can get something that we're told that we want. We don't need it, but we have to have it, or we're not success or anything. And these are the conversations that have to happen, because it's terrifying, stepping into something that is new when this is what you've done for so many years is I've had more panic attacks because of this business. And I'm like, why? I love this stuff, and then I get to this point where I don't love it anymore, because it's a source of so much pain, and then I think, but if I don't do it, what am I going to do? Go to a grocery store and become like a stalker for the rest of my life? Like, that's not where I see so if I fail at this, then I've ruined my life, and something that I used to love to do has become that sort of like seesaw, like, am I going to do it, or did I screw myself over, and none of that is true,
Yes.
But it consumes me. It's terrifying.
Yes. And I would say using drugs to look at that terror. And I think this goes actually back to like when you're 6 years old and you're told that if you use drugs, you're going to let the demons in, right? Connecting with the really scary shit inside of us, whether it's our shadow side, our fears, right? Like there is so much power in making friends with those dark things inside of you. and sitting and taking the time to look at them. And I think it's unfortunate that a lot of people have a message that, like, as soon as you feel that terror or that bad thing or that demon or that darkness, run away, right?
Yes.
Because it's like, no, it's not a demon. It's something that is like clamoring for your love and attention.
Yes.
And how harmful that belief system is, that when you see darkness, that it's bad or wrong.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the opposite of light. And you know, we need both.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book right now called Future Tense, and it's about anxiety. And I was like, it was on like the coaching courses I take. It was on like their recommended reading list. And I was like, all right, just more about anxiety, you know? And it starts off like anxiety is good. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
it's a different message.
yeah, like no, they said the problem with anxiety is not anxiety. It's what we've learned to believe about anxiety, you know. And just like you were talking about, the darkness is good, but we have this thing. No, I don't like that feeling. So we trade the long-term goodness, you know, pleasure for the short-term pleasure, which ends up creating long-term pain. Um, and yeah, drugs can help you through that, because all my experience have been like, those are all the dumb judgments I put on myself that just shut off,
Yeah.
you know. And it feels so good in that time, and then you can get so much thinking and reflecting done in those moments, so that when you're not on them and that fear comes up, that belief of where you're going to be, you know, and the belief in what we are doing,
Yes.
that is going to be the anchor that pulls us through that prison.
Yeah. Yeah. I have always loved the concept of the alchemist, that I am an
Yes.
alchemist and that everything in its natural state is at rest, or it's love, or it's right. And so when something comes to me, a darkness, a hate, a regret, right, and it's all, as the alchemist, I can pour my love and attention into it and bring it back to rest. Right. And that is my personal experience with life too. Right. That I have that power. And I think that power, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is exactly what drugs get us in touch with. And the part that's been taken away from us, where we can transform whatever comes to us and be more in a state of presence and less in a state of avoidance of all these things that don't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it, Rockefeller, that said that we need a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers, you know? And like you said, from the beginning of time, drugs are what open people up. Um, Philosophy, religion, you know, I mean, it used to all be based around drugs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the ones that were then taught, you know, that we were taught are illegal, and the dangerous ones.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit ago, you reminded me, when you're talking about like playing a character, there's this great like Jim Carrey bit where he talks about, he says, if you're depressed, depression is a message that your soul is not happy with the avatar you've created out in the world, that there's a disconnect there. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's just so simple. Yes, of course it
Yeah.
is. Right? This avatar, this character you're playing, your soul's like, nope, I don't like that. And so depression settles out of that. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. Yeah. Jim Carrey is awesome. I love him.
Yeah, it's surprising what a beautiful spiritual being that he has become. And I love that even pop culture is like, you see people like Jim Carrey, or lately Snoop Dogg has been just like killing it. I don't know if you saw his great little video where he got like a Hollywood Square and he stood up for his speech and he goes, I just want to thank me. I want to thank me for showing up every day. I want to thank me for not giving in to my fears. I want to thank me for continuing to work on my dreams. And I was like, fuck yeah, you do. Like, we need more of that to be
Yes.
okay. That's mental health right there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what everybody should be saying to themselves when they achieve something. I want to thank me for showing up and doing this.
Yeah.
Life is hard, man.
Yeah, it's in this day and age where things are at our fingertips with technology. You know, we're on, I mean, well, of course, I mean, we're on more prescription drugs than ever because they didn't have them back, you know, thousands of years ago or anything. But you know, and even in the most advanced countries, that's where you see it the most. You know, you see more mental health medication use, like in countries like the US, Great Britain, stuff like that, than you do in more of the third world countries. You know, we've gotten away from just the basis of it all. And that's what I love about specific substances, is that they come from the earth and you can just grab them and take them and they're good to go. You know, and I see it as a way, especially with like mushrooms being connected with the mycelium network, you know, that the integral part of that whole network. I get to tap into the consciousness of the planet.
Yes.
Like that blows my mind, you know, that I have that opportunity, you know, to tap into the consciousness of the entire planet. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I think like the next growth of that, like if the more time you can spend in that belief system, then you can grow it, like even with your business. I know that sometimes when I'm feeling down, like you're talking about, where I'm like, I haven't signed a new client in a while, or I don't have as many as I want, I will think of exactly what you said. And I will be like, okay, like I'll do a meditation and like go, souls who are out there who, right, who can benefit from this relationship, like find me, right? And I'll prepare empty files in my filing cabinet and I'll wait for people, like with my heart connected to the network, knowing that in some way that I don't understand, right? Like I'm connected to the trees, I'm connected to the souls, like that there's another way to embrace this. Then yes, the marketing is important and getting online is important and all the things that we do. And also there's a magic network out there, right?
That the most profound experience I've had on mushrooms is I saw, like, so I was out in the woods where I normally do it, and there were some spider webs, and then I looked just off to a different like branch, and there was just webs everywhere, but they weren't spider webs. They weren't like, because when I tried to grab them, they just sort of like moved around my fingers and everything. And as I started to notice them, I would look around and they were literally like everywhere. There was the amount of all these different strands was overwhelming. Like you couldn't see where one was and another was. I mean, it looked like they were all together but separate at the same time. And I started thinking about how this is like all the strands of consciousness that are just out there connecting everything. You know, every emotion that we have is, there's just this strand, you know. So if I need love, I don't have to create it inside of myself. You know, of course we can with our own biochemistry, but there is this strand of just pure love that when we tap into, you know, when people respond on our videos or something like in a bad way, like I can just hit them with love because I don't need to get it in order to give it, because I have this endless supply just from the universe, you know. And by tapping into those little strands of consciousness, that's like how that whole vibrational thing like works. You know, I'm wondering, I'm playing with it, but my disbelief, I'm always reminding me, there's a verse in the Bible where I think Jesus asked Peter if he believed, and he said, yeah, I do believe, but help my unbelief. And I'm like, I feel like that's where I'm at. Like, I believe this is the way. I believe and have faith that this is all true, you know. But that old conditioning is still there. And that's where all that fear comes from, you know, that those old beliefs of what if, you
Yeah.
know, and it's that what if question that holds me back.
Yeah, one of the verses that I always loved in the Bible was, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, right?
Yes.
And I used to have a little necklace that was like a tiny little mustard seed in like a little glass box, because I believe that's true, that it's not a lot of faith. And one of the ones I've been working on, like you're talking about connecting to love, is connecting to abundance, right?
Yes.
That idea that I think that most of us live in a world of scarcity. There's not enough for everybody. Someone has to lose. We can't all win. If you don't work hard, you're not going to be able to feed yourself. And I've been questioning, is that really true?
Yeah.
And really trying to put that, and my husband is too. And, we're both doing career changes right now, and we're slowing down our lives, and we're opening up to abundance, and we're both terrified, and we hold each other's hands at night, and then we go out and make more choices the next day, because you only have one life to live, right? If you're not going to test it out in this life, you're never going to find out.
Right. And that's like another one of those thoughts that I want to make it like a heartfelt belief is there are no mistakes. There's nothing bad. And then my mind starts getting involved. I'm like, well, if you kill someone, that's bad. Yeah, of course that's bad. But what I mean is, like, when we think bad things happen, or in my past this was bad, but it all depends on the meaning we give it. There might be bad aspects to it, but truth is like this sort of continuum. I mean, there's different levels of experiences. And so while, my experience with the military might have been bad, but it brought me to this point. And I am in love with learning this stuff and putting pieces together that I find from all these different places and sticking together to make like one cohesive thing. And then when people are like, I've never heard it like that before, I'm like, yeah, like, oh my God, it gets me so fired up. Like the joy. And that's a part when I feel connected to my body. I'm just sort of realizing just now how much emotion, just thinking about it, I'm feeling. I'm like, that's the thing, but we give that up so easy, so
Yeah.
that we can have the sure thing,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think you and I have talked about channeling before. And I mean, there's channeling like when people channel a specific being, but I also think there's just channeling like when you're talking about like the love can come through me, right? There's just being in the space. And I know that's why I love coaching, because when I'm working with the client, I don't even know what's happening for that hour. Like I'm
Yeah.
not really thinking, I'm not trying to figure things out. It's just the space happening, right? That's why I enjoy these conversations with you. And I think I want my whole life to be like, what do I need to eat? How much do I need to exercise? How much social time do I need to be in the space, the flow, the channel, whatever you want to call it, the most? That's my whole
Yes.
goal right now. How many drugs do I need to take? How much sobriety do I need? Right? All of the key pieces just to be in that natural flow of magic.
Do you think that it's possible to sustain that balance? Or do you think that it's part of the balance to have these times that we're both in right now, where, like, I always call it my shame corner. Like I just want to curl up in a ball and go rock back and forth in my shame corner, you know?
I think that, and I don't know is the first answer, right? But I'll tell you what I think. I don't know is the first answer. I think that remembering and forgetting and growth and cocooning and butterflying and right, like it has to be both. It's like yin yang symbol, right? But
Yeah.
I think what changes is that the darkness, it's like the perspective, right? The
Mm.
ocean is calm underneath all the waves. And so even when I'm going through the darkness, I have some perspective that it's part of this bigger journey, and I'm actually on my way to someplace bigger, and I'm grateful for it in the moment instead of being completely consumed by it and believing all of it's real.
Well, you just kind of blew my mind a little bit. That I think is so beautiful. Yeah. And it reminded me of, since I'm on my Joe Dispenza kick, he was talking about a blind person, how the brain just doesn't like let dead real estate stay there. So a blind person doesn't use their visual cortex. However, their hearing and their sense of touch ends up taking up space within that visual cortex, and that's where they get where their sense of smell is better, their sense of hearing is better, because more parts of the mind that aren't designed to process those senses are processing those senses. So it's almost like learning how to see when you're walking through the darkness.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is, wow, that is so cool.
Yes. And I think my experience is that a lot of that has to do with self-care. Because when I look at times in my life when I've been closer to that, it's been when my life's more balanced, when I feel healthier, then I'm able to access that space that has some perspective. Like this last week was really tough for me, but I wasn't lost in it, right? I was like, okay, I'm glad I'm going through this right now. I know this is part of my path to becoming the person that I want to become. I'm uncomfortable. I'm tired. I'm going to sit with this. But, there wasn't the struggle of like, fuck, why am I uncomfortable? Right. That part of it was gone. And that the resistance and the struggle is most of the pain. So the pain was still there, but the resistance and the struggle wasn't there. And I think that's sort of the difference is like, as you sort of cycle up and up and up, you can become better friends with the dark times and the confusing times and the lost times.
That is awesome. That was some deep stuff right there. I love that answer.
I know. And on that, low close, deep thoughts.
Deep
thoughts.